Sup, Sardonicus? Leon here, coming at you with a video I was not planning on making. I certainly did not mean to acquire more books this weekend. It was not my intention. Though looking back on it, it probably was. Who am I kidding? Yesterday was Saturday. My friend had the day off work, and she wanted to do something. And I knew that she is a huge book slut like me, and that she loves going to, bookstores and purchasing books more than she needs, like me. And I knew that despite living in Orange County her whole life, she had somehow never been to any of the shops that I like to haunt, like Revenant from the Other Side. So I suggested we do that, have a little book odyssey, and went and took her to a couple of my favorite places, and we went and did that, and it was great. Got a few cool things here. It was a really nice day, and then came home and did a double feature of two movies that recently hit Blu-ray that I was very happy to finally get a proper release. Started with The Brain, very, very fun, sort of cheesy 80s monster movie from the 80s. And then afterwards, Superstition, another really cool kind of supernatural slasher from the 80s. These are two Blu-rays that Scream Factory recently put out. Great movies that I highly suggest for any viewer of this channel. You probably enjoy those. And two movies, by the way, which I spoke about long before they got proper Blu-ray releases in my 35 Fun Movies to Watch in October video from last year. So if you haven't seen that video and you're into kind of more obscure, fun B movies, definitely check that video out. But anyway, getting into the haul. So first of all, I wanted to take her to Book Junction in Huntington Beach. I knew it was a gamble because that place is just, you're lucky if they're open when you go, even if it's like there's regular hours. Drove up there. Of course, there was a sign on the door saying closed until further notice. So that was kind of a strikeout, but it ended up being okay. So from there, we drove to Anaheim, and I took her to what is now probably my favorite used bookshop in Orange County. Booktown USA, run by a dude named Tom. Super awesome dude. I love going in there. I love chatting with him. Great guy, sweet guy. He's always there, very dedicated, and it's just him, and he's got like another dude, a cool guy, Richard, that comes and helps out sometimes. But we went there, and I was actually surprised because it is kind of a smaller bookstore, it's got that kind of like cozy, messy feel. But I actually found some really solid things, shockingly, actually, including this first one that we're going to start with. I was amazed when I found this there. This is The Cipher by Kathy Koja. Kind of a cult novel now. This was the first book put out under the Del Abyss line. It was published in 1991. This is a book that goes for crazy money online, and one that you just do not see out in the wild very often. This is the first time I have ever seen this in a shop. I owned a copy of this at one point that I had ordered online, probably spent like $30 on it, a couple of years ago. But that copy is now lost. So I was very happy to find this one. It's got a very kind of typical, Del Abyss type cover, and there's the inner artwork. But yeah, this one, this is a book that is beloved by a lot of horror fans, and it's a book that I like. I don't love it. I think that it definitely set the tone for Del Abyss, being the first one that they put out. It's very alternative. It's very edgy. It's very like, I don't know, kind of like, nowadays that word elevated horror is used a lot to describe like films and things. Well, that term didn't really exist back in 91, but you would call this elevated horror today. So if that's your thing, this is one to definitely check out. Either way, I was very happy to find it, and for $2, definitely worth picking up and adding to the collection. Okay, the next one I found at Booktown USA is a zebra title, which I'm always happy to see. This is Rest in Peace by Jack McLean, and this was published in 1990. And zebra Say what you will about their books, they never spared any expense with the covers. I mean, this stuff, it's embossed, very, very just impressive sort of artwork and cover design. And this is one that it sounds pretty intriguing, and I was happy to pick that one up as well. Okay, next up, we've got a book called Devotion by Daniel Westerly. This book was published by Pocket in 1987, and it's got one of those classic covers that we've all seen. The cover artist was actually attributed. It is Richard Newton. So Richard Newton, very, very cool cover there. This is one that, I've seen this cover around and thought, why not? Let's check it out. Looks pretty cool. All right, next up is one that I was not really familiar with. Here we have The Punishment by Doris Shannon. And this book was published by Fawcett Crest in 1982. And that's a really cool, really effective cover. Very, very 1982. I dig that a lot. Okay, next up, we've got Unholy Ghost by Claudia Davison. And this book was published by Lynx in 1989. It's one that I never came across this before, so was happy to see it. Looks pretty cool. Okay, a few more here from Booktown, USA. The next one, the cover definitely struck my eye. I'd never heard of this book before. This is Quonset by James F. Murray Jr. This book was published by Avon in 1979. And if you look there at the sort of tagline, this is, late 70s in the wake of Jaws, when, all of these sort of, all of those novels were kind of being churned out. Well, this is a madman outside the water on the beach, apparently a killer on the loose, and he has apparently an operating room in the back of his van. And that sounds great. So I was very happy. What a pleasant discovery. These are the kinds of discoveries that I absolutely love. The kinds, to find a book like this that I did not know existed. How cool, right? So yeah, very happy pickup there. All right, next we've got a story collection called Toy Box by Al Sarantonio. Yeah, it's missing a segment of the cover, but whatever, that's okay. This book was published by Leisure in 2003. And Al Sarantonio is kind of, I imagine most of these stories, if not all of them, are centered around the holiday of Halloween, All Hallows Eve, which Mr. Sarantonio loves. I think most of the fiction that he writes is centered around Halloween, which is cool. And, I've read some of his short fiction, and he's definitely kind of like a, I don't know how you'd say, like a nostalgic, lyrical writer. Kind of almost reminds me of Ray Bradbury in a sense. High praise indeed, right? So I figured, yeah, why not? Let's get, some more short fiction, bite-sized works. I know he's written novels too. I have some of his novels. Would like to get to them at some point. But in the meantime, here we've got Toy Box. So, it's got a blurb from Joe Lansdale. So, yeah, that should be cool. And then the last one that I picked up from Booktown, USA, The Strange Seed by T.M. Wright. This book was published by Playboy Press. Playboy horror occult. I absolutely love that. And this came out in 1980. This is another one of those just amazing covers that we've all seen. Just absolutely love that. The premise sounds intriguing. It's got some pretty high praise from none other than Stephen King there on the front cover, so that's cool. But yeah, when I saw this, I was like, how could I not get that, right? I mean, how could you resist a book with the title The Strange Seed and a cover like this? So yeah, very happy to get that and add it to the collection. So those are the books that I got from Booktown USA in Anaheim. Very, very cool. And then I decided, and my friend got a bunch of stuff too, and she's more into like fantasy. She got a bunch of like stuff with like unicorns on them, but cool, like those cool 70s and 80s paperbacks. I mean, I shudder to think if I ever got into another like genre. There's just like the world of science fiction and fantasy from this period is just insane. Like whenever I go to a bookstore, if I find like a bunch of cool like horror paperbacks from the 80s, there's like 3 times as many fantasy and science fiction ones. But yeah, so she got a bunch of stuff there. Then I said, no, but we still got to go to Bookman in the city of Orange. And now Bookman is a shop that recently relocated. They're in a new spot, still in Orange, but I'm just really not feeling the new location. I know it's still kind of new and it's got that look like it's incomplete yet. But the real big bummer is that their horror section has totally shrunk. I mean, these guys used to have a horror section that was almost as good as the Iliad in North Hollywood, but is now just like a shadow of its former self, and it's mostly like Dean Koontz, Stephen King, Anne Rice. Just really disappointing. I don't know. They don't have as many books as they used to have, but I did find a couple this time. So the first one that I picked up there is Cabal by Clive Barker. And I had never seen this edition before, maybe because it's a UK edition. This is from Fontana, which is a UK publisher. This edition came out in 1989, though the book was first published, I think, in an international edition in 1988. Despite being a huge Clive Barker fan, loving the Books of Blood and his early novels, I have actually never read Cabal, and I'm a big fan of Nightbreed, the movie on which this is based. But yeah, I've always been meaning to read Cabal, and when I saw this beautiful edition, I mean, just look at that. It's just very, very cool. I couldn't resist, so I thought, okay, this is the moment to spring for Cabal and check it out. So yeah, I was really happy to see that. Very, very cool edition, in my opinion. Okay, next up is a book that I've never heard of. This was totally new to me, but the cover definitely caught my eye. Trinity Grove, and this was written by David Van Meter Smith and published by Avon, a publisher I love, in 1990. And yeah, very, very cool cover. And again, all of this stuff is embossed, so you've got the tactile nature of that bas relief. It's just so cool, very, very cool. This this seems like a cool book, cool fun book. I believe it's a British horror novel, which I'm always down for. So yeah, figured I would pick that one up as well. There's the back. All right, 2 more here. Next, we've got The Ninja by Eric V. Lustbader. And this book, I didn't write it. This book was published by Fawcett Crest. And when did this thing come out? This was published in 1980. And when I first saw this, I thought that this was the novel which the amazing canon film Enter the Ninja was based on. But then upon a little research, I found out that actually it was not, Enter the Ninja was not based on this book. This book, despite being a huge success when it was published, I mean, it spent weeks on the New York Times bestsellers list, it actually never got its own film adaptation, even though apparently elements of this were lifted in a lot of those 80s ninja movies, like the canon films, like Revenge of the Ninja and so on. But yeah, it never got its own. there were some close calls. It was in development for a while in the early 80s. I heard that John Carpenter was attached to write and direct it for a time, post The Thing and that failure, but it just never came to fruition. But yeah, I mean, I love ninja movies. I've never read a ninja novel. This thing is an epic, just massive, but looks fun. Looks fun, and I dig that cover and the idea of just like this just epic ninja novel. So yeah, had to get that one. And then finally, the last book here of this haul that I found at Bookman is a fantasy novel. I joined my friend in the fantasy section, and I could not resist this when I saw it. This is A Quest for Symbolist, and the reason I picked this up is because it is written by Michael Shea. And Michael Shea is an amazing writer. Sadly, he passed away a couple of years ago, I believe. But he wrote some great fantasy and horror. I read, when I was in Korea, I read a book of his called Nift the Lean, which is kind of like, I guess it's like a fantasy, episodic kind of fantasy novel. Amazing. Just, he's such a good writer. Very, very descriptive and just creative. I loved that. He's also written some great horror short stories like in the Lovecraft mythos. He wrote a great horror story called The Autopsy in the early 80s. And I'm just a huge fan of his. I think that he like John Shirley, like another author who I have kind of praised on this channel. I think Michael Shea is one that never really got the props that he deserves. And sadly, he's gone, but hopefully down the road, his work will be discovered. And so this is apparently one of his classic fantasy novels, and I am really stoked to check this one out. So yeah, Quest for Symbolist by Michael Shea. That is it, guys. That's the little completely gratuitous weekend haul. I did not need any of these books, but what can I say? It's just, I was out, I saw these books, and, of course, I cannot resist when I see such lovely treasures. They need a home, right? So I picked them up. Hope you guys enjoyed watching the video. If you've read any of those books, or if you have any thoughts on them at all, feel free to comment below. Thanks for watching. I'll see you guys next time. Peace out.